it seems like the easier thing to do is for the marketing teams to focus on understanding the need and then putting words or messages to that, but not so much on delivering on the deed or the actual substantive elements of what that might look like, or what those needs, or what that real purposeful intent looks like. How are you seeing companies reconcile that? Because there's a lot of PR benefit to putting these messages out and to being attached to what seems to be a multi-stakeholder approach. And yet there's also a lot of risk to being viewed as inauthentic when your efforts or lack of efforts are exposed.
Yeah, I think there's a few parts, to that answer. One is, I think the encouraging news is that the BS radar of every stakeholder out there is so highly attuned now. Over the last decade of social media and so on, we've become emboldened in terms of, it's not just a consumer pushing back against a CPG brand because they don't like a product, but leaders are being called out in so many different ways, the Me Too movement being a great example. So you've got not just consumers calling out brands, and not just employees calling out brands, but now you've got the investor class calling out brands. And, that's one component. So I think we can take heart from the fact that no one's got any tolerance for disingenuous behavior. Secondly, I think we have to recognize that in and around any conversation, whether it's sustainability or CSR in the times, gone past, or whether it's purpose now or ESG, there's an evolution of that conversation. The sophistication and maturity of that conversation, and that includes a shakeout, like you've seen with ESG recently, where it's the shiny squirrel, there's the flight of all this capital, we're all going to go and sort of slap that ESG label on our fund, and then all's well and good, and we're going to attract everybody and the investors we need. And those disingenuous behaviors have shaken out, and that doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that it's that early first flush of excitement or interest, and then it shakes out and matures. So that disingenuous behavior, it's not good or okay, but it has its place. Then I think thirdly, I think you're starting to see now just this recognition that the change we need to make in the world is not linear, because the problems we're solving for are concurrent and compounding in the future and hurtling back towards us in the present, in which case the needs that we need to solve for are exponential. They're not linear. And so is the expectation on business to do it. So if you're sitting there and you're a CEO or a founder or some company, you're sitting there going, well, what did we do last year? And how can we iterate or incrementally kind of innovate and do a little bit better than we did last year? You're not solving for the reality of the world that we live in. And I believe you need to actually project out to the future, 3 or 5 years down the track, and reverse engineer how you show up and build milestones in terms of that. So back out of the future rather than build on the past. So I put my trust in, all the stakeholders that are calling out companies now. I see that shakeout in any dialogue, ESG or otherwise, as a necessary part of the sort of evolution of that conversation. But I also recognize that companies that are sort of sleepwalking their way into the future are going to be caught flat-footed, because these issues are becoming kind of so real and present in our daily lives, and it's exponential. And so you need to get ahead of it just to be relevant.